All right, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're very grateful that you are able to join us today for what will be the first in a series of NACADA virtual town halls sponsored by the Board of Directors and the Council. These events are meant to be an extension of the town hall gathering that happens at the annual conference. Our topic of discussion today is the NACADA strategic goals. Before we get to that, I'd like you to meet our panel. I'm going to start with myself. My name is Kerry Kincannon. I'm the Director of Exploratory Advising at Oregon State University. And like my co-presenters today, I'm a member of the Board of Directors. I'll have my colleagues introduce themselves in the order that you see them here on the slides. So we'll start with Shannon.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Shannon Lynn Burton, and I am the Associate University Ombudsperson at Michigan State University. My role here today is as one of our Board of Director members, and I will be moderating the question and answer portion towards the end, so you'll hear more from me later on.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patty Griffin, and I am from Fort Hays State University in Kansas, and I am starting my third year as a member of the Board of Directors.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for some people. My name is Brett McFarland. I'm the Executive Director of Academic Advising at the University of California, Davis, and also one of the Board of Directors members.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brody Broshears. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Academic Success at the University of Southern Indiana, and I'm starting my second year on the Board of Directors. We're glad you're here.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone, and thanks, participants. So here is our agenda for today. While you'll note from the first three items that we have some explanatory material that we'll present at the top, this is meant to be a participatory event. If you look at the bottom of the screen that's framing our content, you'll notice a Q&A button. As we're presenting, and certainly when we get to the discussion section of the town hall, we invite you to submit questions via this channel. Shannon will be moderating those questions and framing them for our discussion. I'll draw your attention to the website that accompanies this NACADA event. A link to this site went out with the invite for the event, but you'll also see the URL on your screen, as well as a screenshot of that page. We'll be on the site. We want you to note that you'll see a link to a Google form. We'll be keeping this open for a week or so. We invite you to use this form to submit additional comments and questions that you want to share with the board. This event is being recorded and will be shared with the broader membership, so those who can't join us today will have the opportunity to hear the discussion and share their thoughts via the Google form as well. Why are we gathering around this particular topic? The board and the council have invested a good deal of time thinking about the strategic goals in the last year. This town hall gives us an opportunity to shine a light on the organization's current strategic goals, share with the membership examples of benchmarks and measurements that have been established for the goals, and provide our community with the chance to offer questions, comments, and feedback. Here are the two learning outcomes we hope to achieve for today. We want to provide you with information about current board and council activities related to the strategic goals, and we want to provide you with the opportunity via this Q&A function to ask questions and provide comments and suggestions related to the strategic goals and the work surrounding them. So here are 7 strategic goals. And in the next 2 slides, I'd like to share what's new. What's new in relationship to our work with the strategic goals. So the first thing I want to do is draw your attention to the fact that there were changes to the language of 2 of the goals as of last spring. We changed the language in goal number 4 to better align with NACADA's diversity statement, revised diversity statement, and the renaming of the diversity committee to the inclusion and engagement committee. We also changed the first word of goal number 7 from utilize to expand to reflect a spirit and an ethos of momentum and growth in the organization's use of technology to support its efforts. The other significant thing that happened in the last year is that the board and council drafted and refined benchmarks and measurements for each strategic goal that we will attend to over the course of the next 5 years. The benchmarks provide us with the tangible and specific activities associated with the achievement of each goal. The measurements are an articulation of why and by when in relation to the benchmark reporting and activity, and in some cases, an initial identification of NACADA constituents who will be working on the measurements. What we would like to do before we get to discussions and comments is have our panelists share a handful of examples of how the board is working to operationalize the strategic goals. We'll start with Patty Griffin, who is going to discuss strategic goal number 2. Patty?
Strategic goals with where we are in academic advising across the globe. We have talked at length about each of these. In strategic goal 2, we have come up with 3 specific benchmarks. And these benchmarks, as were talked about in regards to measurements, have been assigned primarily to the Professional Development Committee for Goal 2. And that is the committee who earlier this year had completed their work on the NACADA core competencies that we hope that you are all learning about and participating in as we're moving that forward for everyone. So what we have done at this point is to initiate a gap analysis charge for both advisors and advising administrators across our membership. And so we have asked that the Professional Development Committee, by our mid-year meeting, which will be in March of 2018, that they present us with a preliminary report of how they're planning to move forward with the gap analysis. Our second benchmark for them is to provide us with a final gap analysis report with recommendations at our annual conference in Phoenix next fall. And then finally, the third benchmark is to have the Professional Development Committee present their implementation plan no later than our 2021 annual conference for approval by the board. We believe this is important. We're not wanting to rush our work. We want to be thorough. We want to make sure that we are providing opportunities across our membership for us to help each of you to engage in professional development in new and different ways. So that is strategic goal number 2. So Brett McFarland is going to speak to strategic goal number 3.
Thanks, Patty. So strategic goal number 3, as you have in front of you, is promoting the role of effective academic advising and student success to college and university decision makers. Essentially, what we're trying to achieve there is to help institutional leaders better understand those key links between academic advising and success. And we've broken that down into 3 benchmarks that the board is working on. The first one is really designed to further develop the network that we have. And so the specific benchmark says the executive office, with guidance and active participation by the board of directors, will create a network of external higher education partners with which university leaders are connected. And so what we're trying to do there is we understand that institutional leaders can't participate in all NACADA events. So we're trying to create networks and abilities for us to meet them where they are and to be able to continue those partnerships. So a few examples that are out there that we have, and again, there's many more than what I'll describe, but the APLU, which is the Association of Public and Land Grant Universities. We have a group that's called the Reinvention Collaborative, which those are institutional leaders in high research organizations around the country. The Achieving the Dream Foundation, Complete College America are just another couple examples. The second benchmark's really focused on how do we serve as key source and content experts to institutional leaders that are out there. And the benchmark is that the board of directors will actively participate with the executive office in strategic planning to actively engage and share NACADA's work with student success with approved partners. And so we do that through a variety of means, through presentations, through publications, through partner members in both associations, and then through joint projects that we work on as well. And then finally, we're really helping get institutional leaders connected with these aspects on their own campuses. And so the third benchmark is that the NACADA Board of Directors will develop a plan for strategies to promote the role of academic advising and student success to institutional leaders. So some of the ongoing NACADA programs that we have, for example, the Administrators Institute, has a campus-wide track just for institutional leaders in that area. This year, there will be a research seminar to help institutions be able to develop a research agenda on their own campus. We have an assessment institute every year. We have the Consultants and Speakers Bureau through NACADA. And then most recently, I'm sure you've heard about the Excellence in Academic Advising partnership with the John Gardner Institute. So there's a lot of exciting things that are moving forward with that. The next piece of that will really be thinking about how can we help our members at our partner institutions really develop these things from the ground up and be able to do work in that area too. So that's enough for me. I'm going to turn over to Brody Brochures, who's going to talk to us about strategic goal number 4.
Good afternoon again. Strategic goal number 5 is develop and sustain effective association leadership. The association over the past several years has been looking to provide a structured way to train and support prospective, current, and outgoing leaders within the association. The benchmarks in goal number 5 focus on those efforts. The Sustainable Leadership Committee, in consultation with the Board of Directors, will submit a proposal for a leadership academy. This proposal will include a budget to begin and maintain the academy. A progress report will be submitted to the board at the 2018 mid-year meeting, and a receipt of proposal with the budget will be provided by the 2018 annual conference. Each division then is going to be asked to utilize the Leadership Academy framework as a focus for the development of transparent and effective leadership development plan for each respective division. This leadership development plan will include outcomes for both new and continuing leaders, and these plans with a budget will need to be provided before or at the 2019 annual conference. And then, of course, the ultimate goal is that NACADA leaders will participate in the Leadership Academy. The association wants all incoming NACADA leaders to participate in the Leadership Academy by 2020. By the 2022 annual conference, the hope is that over 25% of current NACADA leaders will have participated in the Leadership Academy. NACADA is also very interested in understanding why leaders don't progress through the association. One additional benchmark in goal number 5 is the development of a formal subcommittee to review the various challenges members face when moving into elected and appointed leadership positions. I've been charged to lead this subcommittee, and our subcommittee will be providing a progress report to the Board of Directors at the mid-year meeting of the Board and Council in 2018, with final recommendations of further action needed presented to the Board of Directors at the annual 2018 conference. At this time, I'm going to transition back to Shannon, who's going to lead us into our Q&A for the remainder of the webinar.
Great, thank you, Brody. So we're now going to open up the discussion to those of you who have joined us today. In order for this process to move smoothly, we just have a few housekeeping notes. First, as our panelists respond individually, there may be a bit of back and forth as Zoom switches between the screens. We apologize in advance for any inconvenience that might create. Second, please enter any questions you have into the question and answer box on Zoom, as we explained at the start of this town hall. I'll be moderating them and opening them up to our panelists. Third, questions and answers will continue until the final 5 to 10 minutes of the scheduled time. And finally, for those who have questions but don't feel comfortable having them answered live, all attendees have been provided a link to a Google form to provide further feedback to the Board of Directors. Please note that you do not need to have a Google account to enter responses into this form. So let's begin. Let's see if we don't have any questions in the question box yet. So if you have questions about the strategic goals, please feel free to enter them into that Q&A box. As you think about these goals, one of the things that we're hoping that you do is think about how they apply to you, not only as a professional yourself, but as they apply to your institutions, as well as how they might apply to the field of academic advising as a whole. So we do have our first question, and the first question is, we mentioned the Leadership Academy. Is this for elected leaders or potential leaders?
I think one of the things that the association's been doing specifically is looking at a couple of different tiers for who would be involved in the Leadership Academy. One of the things that we've been doing both with the council and the board and some of the divisions is bringing folks on prior to election or prior to the appointment beginning. And I think that that's been really useful. I know that leaders who've been joining in their respective divisions have really liked the idea of being involved prior to them coming on officially. But that sustainable leadership group has also been looking at folks coming out of leadership positions, people leaving the board, people leaving the council, and helping them remain active within the association. So I think you're going to see a strand of different ways the Leadership Academy is going to impact newer members, but also, or newer leaders, but also leaders that will be leaving their formal role within the association.
Great. And connected to that, Brody, as well, when can members expect to hear more about the Leadership Academy?
I believe that 2018 at the annual is when we will make the approval for the budget. And at that point, I think we would start sharing that information for the divisions to be able to kind of work and do some things to set up their own respective budgets. The goal will be that 2020 date, right, to get all new leaders by 2020 participating in the Leadership Academy.
Great. And I think this is more of a question for the entire panel, but we had a question from an attendee who wants to know who we consider a leader in NACADA and if we can tell them a little bit more about the positions that might fall under this category.
I'll start with the answer from my perspective of being on the board for the last 2 years. And one of the things, if you're new to NACADA, you may not be as aware that every position is not an elected position. We also have positions where people can volunteer to become involved. And so leadership is not just about people who are on the board or the council, that maybe people say, I see them all the time, they are obviously leaders, but we're talking about leaders all the way down in the region, people who are volunteering to help with conferences, who are participating in research initiatives for publications. So our definition, I guess, of leadership is much broader than what you may be familiar with on your own campus, because in NACADA, no matter where you are, you have that opportunity to be a leader with our other members and to help bring in new people as well. And we are looking at that from that perspective. So leadership goes all the way down. You come, you join, you may select a commission, interest groups that you want to be part of, and you're engaging in that process. And that allows you to start having influence back on your own campus, in your own professional development, and across the organization of NACADA.
If you were to look at the specific benchmark, they do define the prospective leaders that are listed there. They talk about any appointed and elected commission, interest group, region, committee, and advisory board chair, the NACADA board of directors, the council, the journal editors, the editors of in-production NACADA publications, and current region conference chair. So you get a wide range there, I think, in terms of the leadership, just to add. But those are the specific definitions of the leaders impacted in the benchmark.
Right. Because we need to start somewhere, and we're hoping that once we do training with additional leaders, there are more opportunities for more training to happen because other people will have participated at that point.
And I did just want to add in there too, we've got the official list there, but it's important to remember there's a lot of leadership positions in NACADA outside of that. So we've got thought leaders that are doing work within our publications. We've got a lot of people leading research around the country. So there's a lot of different areas that comes into play, but those will be things that the board will follow up with in future work.
Great. And a follow-up question kind of to the Leadership Academy again is, will those who don't attend the Leadership Academy still have an opportunity to participate in NACADA leadership positions?
Yeah, I think the intent of the Leadership Academy is to just provide additional support and development for leaders. I think the idea is that In the past, a lot of times folks would come on board and kind of be thrown to the wolves and have to kind of develop and learn on their own. And this idea is to provide some infrastructure around that leadership development. So I think definitely that's the idea that's fueling this.
And to expand on this a little bit more, one of our attendees wants to know how NACADA is reaching out to leadership at our various institutions.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I can take that through the networks again that are trying to be created, as many partnerships as possible, through really connecting with institutional leaders where they are at in their own professional societies, in their own organizations, in their research banks, that sort of thing. I think is where we're initially trying, and then we do certainly realize that we can do a better job of providing members with ways to speak about these things on their own campuses, with ways to provide this information effectively up through leadership on their own campus. And so that will be an area of growth for us and development over these next couple of years.
And I would add to that we have, with a new research initiative with NACADA for the Research Center that we will hopefully be ribbon cutting in January. I know that Wendy Troxel, as the leader of this, has been participating in an annual chairs conference, which gives her an opportunity to come before academic chairs and talk to them about how this can be impactful for scholarship, teaching, and research for both their professional and their faculty advisors. And that's been a great opportunity to start dialogue at a different level that sometimes people don't think about that chair level. They're just thinking at the higher point, but to make everyone aware that NACADA is looking at the leaders, because at institutions, we're all structured differently. And so who is the leadership at the top and who has influence? And so making sure that we have an opportunity to touch across our campuses and by types and locations of our campuses.
I'll just add one piece too, is we've seen a significant increase in the number of requests for consultants around the country. And so that's another area where we have the opportunity to really individually connect with campus leaders. Those visits always involve at least a provost level meeting. Typically, a lot of times the chancellor or president is involved in one of those.
Great, thank you. At this juncture, I want to remind our attendees today that this is also an opportunity to ask questions about all of the strategic goals. We had invited Patty, Brett, and Brody here to discuss 3 of our goals a little bit more in depth in terms of the benchmarking, but we have been doing that benchmarking as it relates to all of the strategic goals that NACADA has in place. So if you have questions about any of them, not just the 3 that were presented here, we're happy to take those today as well. In relation to that, one of the questions we had come in was about how we are fostering inclusive practices within the association. Can we talk a little bit more about some of the processes and ideas that are in movement to help foster those practices?
Well, I'll speak briefly just about the recent change to what used to be the Diversity Committee. In terms of recognition of a need to really focus on inclusivity and equity within the association. And so that newly reformed committee is certainly going to be doing a lot of work over these next couple of years in this particular area, so that we have the type of a situation where we feel that every member is not only a participant and a member of the organization, but where every member feels like they have the opportunity to thrive in whatever way they professionally see fit. So that certainly would be an area that committee is going to be spending a lot of time with, in partnership, of course, with the other leadership committees, the board, and the council as we move forward.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge one of their specific benchmarks that they have, which is to develop a plan to assess the climate of inclusivity and equity within the association. So, that's work that hopefully is moving forward within the next year.
Thank you. So, We had a question kind of going back to the leadership piece, but how does the Emerging Leaders Program fit into all of this, and why, and how can we better make this a stepping stone to leadership in the association?
I guess I can maybe start there. I think ultimately, right, the Emerging Leaders Program is doing a couple of different things. One is it is working to get as many members kind of connected to the leadership opportunities that exist. And then I think the other goal is that whole preparation piece, right? The idea that we're really preparing leaders for different roles within the association. So I see that program kind of doing both of those things in particular. I know that in Region 5, for example, with the Great Lakes Great Leaders Program, one of the things that we were very interested in looking at is what happened after persons who were Great Lakes Great Leaders mentees, what happened to them post that experience. And I think that the association more broadly is looking at finding ways to integrate folks who've completed the Emerging Leaders Program into more formal leadership positions. So I think that's the role of one of the roles of the program, and I think that continues to be a goal moving forward for the association is using that as a vehicle, both regionally and throughout the association, as a way to get folks into more formal leadership roles.
And I would echo what Brody said, and as a former emerging leader mentor, one of the things that you're charged with the person who is selected that you're mentoring is the idea of where are their goals professionally, but where are their goals within NACADA, and what type of leadership. It kind of goes back to that conversation of what is leadership within NACADA. And there are a variety of different roles, and there's something for everyone. It's just figuring out what is that pathway for you, and that mentor having the opportunity to connect those individuals to people and to really encourage them to be able to grow professionally and in their leadership in NACADA, whatever role that leadership actually ends up being.
Great, thank you. Brett, can you go back and expand a little bit more on the connection with the John Gardner Institute?
Yeah, you bet. So the John Gardner Institute has a long history of working with campuses to improve success on their campus. And the new partnership that we have is really being able to work with them to dive in on what are the advising structures, what are the policies, practices, and certainly activities that the campus would like to focus on and make changes to. And so that's really starting with an outcomes-based approach. With that, there'll be specialized consultants that work with each campus for essentially a period of 2 years to refine the institution's goals, work with them on those goals. One of the problems that a lot of times happens with shorter term consulting assignments that happen is that recommendations will be made, they go into report, and a lot of times those reports don't go anywhere, or the right people aren't seeing those reports. So the partnership with John Gardner is to create an environment where institutional leaders from the president, chancellor down have committed to this process of making improvements to advising on the campus. And so the nice piece about this is this will ensure that these changes actually happen on these campuses, that these things move forward. And that's been one of the frustrations that institutional leaders have had, is working together to make sure that these things do actually change on campuses. So the pilot group will be starting in the spring for this. There are informational sessions that are still happening in January, if your campus is interested in learning more about that. And I think this it will be a great long-term partnership.
Great, thanks, Brett.
Mm-hmm.
We want to go back to a question that we had. We had someone ask about, with the budget cuts at university level, has the NACADA leadership looked into making professional development seminars and classes more affordable for the NACADA membership?
I would say that is a very large concern for the board. That is something that we talk about at every meeting that we have is, everyone can't make an institute, attend an annual conference, but what can we do to provide more affordable opportunities? Some of that has come with some of the classes that we've started to offer. In the past, we were only offering 2, but being able to join things, the webinars, I feel like in the last couple of years, we've really stepped up on the webinars to provide an opportunity where you're paying a fee and that can be represented to your whole campus. And, as long as you're doing that in one central location. And that is a conversation that we've had a lot because, of course, one of the things that we have to balance that with is we have a budget. We don't want to raise everything and membership fees so high that excludes people from membership and attending even more. And so we're trying to find ways. And part of that is, I believe in strategic goal 2, part of what the PDC will be looking at, as they're doing that gap analysis is who can afford and who can't afford professional development opportunities and making sure that we have a variety of different ways for people to get the same type of information so that it is accessible for all who need it.
I would just add to that, right? I think that even so, for example, with the Leadership Academy, I think there'll be the development of modules that folks may be able to complete online as part of the onboarding process. I think we've done that already with several of the formal elected and appointed positions with great success. But the other really cool thing I think as it relates to this piece is the idea that this Leadership Academy, I think, hits at a couple of different pieces, right? Strategic Goal 7 is really about enhancing technology in the way that we deliver pieces to membership, right? Even this virtual town hall is really in response to not everyone makes it to an annual conference and can speak to the issues that they may have or the questions or suggestions they might have for the association. And so I think the role that technology is going to play in that piece is particularly important. Just to kind of add, Shannon had asked me to address the affordability issue. We get questions all the time about what stops people from moving into leadership. And that subcommittee that I'm leading, when we ask people why they're going to decline running for office or becoming a leader in a particular role, almost to 100% of the time, it's either a lack of funds or a lack of time or a lack of institutional support. And so I think the hope is that the technology piece can aid in that maybe the Leadership Academy will aid in that in the sense that it may be providing tools for folks to be leaders even within their own campus if they're not able to, say, become a leader within the association.
Yeah, and at the risk of being Pollyanna, I would hope that some of the outreach that Brett has described with some of these partnerships and larger entities across campus will give NACADA a stronger presence with institutional administrators, and hopefully they'll recognize the benefit if members really do want to participate and get more involved with that there's collateral impact on your campus when you actively participate in NACADA leadership. So I would hope that would come about as well. I did want to, if we could, I noticed that Charlie Nutt is in the audience here, and so I'm wondering if we might be able to queue up Charlie and have him talk about that affordability issue for just a few minutes or shorter.
Sure. Thank you, Carrie, and welcome everyone. We're so glad to have you here, and a special thanks to the board members who've taken the time to develop this town hall. I will say that we continue to work very hard to increase scholarship funds for the events, the annual conferences, the region conferences, all the institutes. First this year, the Finance Committee held the very first scholarship fundraiser, dinner, or activity in St. Louis. We'll be doing that again in Phoenix. The silent auction goes towards scholarships. So one of the things that the board and Finance Committee is very committed to is to continue to increase giving towards scholarships to help members who need that financial support to apply for scholarships to attend our events. to help cover the registration fees and that type of thing. So the further that we can increase the scholarship funding, the more we'll be able to help within that. We also do our very best, Carrie and everyone here, as you know, to keep our registration fees very low for all the conferences and events. If you look at other associations, our registration fees are much lower than most other annual conferences or region conferences or institutes. So we continue to do everything we can. We have phenomenal meeting planners in the executive office who do everything they can to keep the costs low. So that is, as Patty says, an issue the board continually talks about. But I think the fundraising for scholarships and expanding those scholarships on a needs-based aspect is going to really be the future of how we help to do that. So thank you, Carrie, for that opportunity.
And Charlie, I wanted to add too, one of the things that President Sanis charged the board with is looking at some funds to be able to help those leaders who are unable to attend annual conference due to costs to be able to do that. And so there is a group of us that are looking at that to be able to bring recommendations forward to the board as well. So I think that will be another opportunity for leadership and diversity related to the annual conference as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. We've had a number of questions come in about the strategic goal number 4, about the goal that refers to fostering inclusive practices within the association. What I would like to focus on today is that we are having a town hall specifically dedicated to this topic on January 18th. For those that have some real deep questions about it, we'll have some expert panelists ready to address this goal specifically. And we will work to have the benchmark and measurement documents available as we can. So we had a question come in wanting to know what goals have been the most difficult to address and why. I think I'll start on some of this. I think we have a board that brings a vast array of experience from NACADA to address these goals. And we all have a very complementary background in terms of how we approach the work that we do when it comes to looking at how we're going to establish the goals as well as find ways to benchmark and measure their achievement. So I think that's been a very positive aspect of the team that we currently have.
I would also add to Shannon's comments, you know, as we have talked about the strategic goals for the last 2 years that I've been on the board, I don't know that we could ever say one is more important than the other because everyone touches different people in a different way. And I think, you know, the diversity of the conversations, one of our large issues is making sure that we are providing and serving all of our members. And you know, there may be some goals on the list that you say, oh, it doesn't impact me. But one of the things that I always like people to think about, what about the perspective if you were standing in someone else's shoes? What does that look like for them? And I think we really, as a board, have to remember that we do not all, you know, have the same background. We don't have the same knowledge. We don't have access to the same things. And so, you know, I don't think as a board that we would ever be able to say, now, are there some we've had more discussion of because they involve more things? Yes, I would definitely say that. And we have had some very difficult conversations. And I think some of those conversations are what was reflected in the 2 strategic goals this year that we changed the wording on because we wanted to be reflective of what we're doing and where we're going with NACADA. So, you know, from a board perspective, each of the 7 is important and they all deserve our attention for us to serve our membership better.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and you know, support what Patty said. I think there was a lot of discussion that went into these strategic goals, and just the exercise of going through the benchmarks and measurements and then trying to operationalize them over the course of the next few years is going to be really illuminating for us. President Sanis has talked about this benchmarks and measurements process as being fluid, as being one that will probably evolve over the course of the 5 years, and we may have to adjust and change as we go through. And I think that's part of the reason why we're seeking input from membership and conversation around this, so that we are attending to the dynamics of the goals, and attending to making NACADA be the most effective organization it can be for the breadth of our membership.
So I see, I know we hate to keep calling on Charlie here, but he's been involved with this for a long time. And I think one of the things for me the most challenging is we're trying, as a board, we're trying to vision what this profession looks like in 10 years, in 20 years, and be able to have strategic goals that align well with that. And so maybe Charlie can, if you're still there, Charlie, if you'd be comfortable speaking towards that process.
Sure. Thank you, Brett. I would agree with Patty and with Kieran, with everyone, that all the goals are important, and we're looking at all of those and have been. I think looking at where we want to be in the next 10 years as an association and as a profession and in higher education as a whole, particularly in regard to academic advising, I think looking particularly at the goal dealing with research and publications and getting information out into the field is one of the key goals, and the new research center certainly supports that. And I think that's an area that we need to continue to focus on. And then I'm very excited, as Shannon said, that on January the 18th, there'll be a webcast specifically around the goal 4 in terms of inclusivity. That is an issue not just for NACADA, but let's be honest, folks, for our entire country today, as well as in higher education as a whole. And so NACADA wants to be a leader in that area, and we can only do so by hearing from our members on where we can be more inclusive, how we can more support people of diversity of all types, whether it be ethnicity, whether it be sexual identity, whether it be globally. But the whole issue of being an inclusive association, I think, is a very important goal that I've been involved with NACADA since 1991, yes. And we've been looking at that issue since I began being involved. And it began with being sure we were including faculty and being sure we were including administrators, and always looking at how inclusive could we be with two-year college advisors and members. And I think that's a topic we're never, ever going to stop looking at. And the more we talk about it, the more we have difficult conversations, and the more we listen to our members and how we can better be inclusive of all people and of all students. We're all about students in this association, and with all members, that's going to be key to the future of our association, of our profession, and of higher education. So I really appreciate the questions that have come in today about that topic, and encourage you all to join us for that January 18th webcast that Shannon spoke of earlier, because inclusivity is so important today, and NACADA truly is committed to that. And I can assure you, as an executive director, I am totally committed to inclusivity of all types and all people and all students. Specifically, how do we work together to provide our students a safe environment and an inclusive environment on our campuses? Because student success is why we're here. And how can NACADA support that? So, Brett, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak for a moment on that.
I would go back, and when we start to think about diversity and inclusivity even within the association. I think even as a board, right, we get really tied into the benchmarks and the goals. And one of the things that we've had conversations with at the board that isn't really addressed in the strategic goals is just the number of new members, right, that are within our organization. And how do we engage new members, those folks who've been in advising less than 3 years? And I know that in Region 5, our region conferences are large and full of lots of brand new members who are wanting to understand the benefits of membership, who are wanting to be engaged in the association. And so even when things don't automatically show up in our strategic goals, as a board, they become really important for us. We've had lots of discussions about how do we engage new members in the association? How do we make sure they understand that membership and the values of membership is really important to their development as new academic advising staff. So I think that even beyond the strategic goals, there are things that the board is thinking about related to diversity and inclusivity within the association.
Great, thanks, Brody. So I wanted to go back to a question that we had. So as NACADA members, how can we best support the board's efforts in terms of the strategic goals?
Well, I'll jump in on that one because you all are here and doing that right now. So I think feedback, knowing what questions are out there, knowing what concerns people have, that's the most helpful thing possible. Is without that, we can't effectively do this work. And so I think that is key. And then participating in these activities, any assessments that come out, surveys, that sort of thing. This is how we gather this information on what's most effective. And if you see me doing this, I live in California, so we're energy conservation all the time. So my lights keep flipping out. So there's nothing dramatic going on other than that. So just so you know.
I would agree with Brett. It's very important when you are in an association or if you're watching with somebody and you're not a member currently, there's a reason, earlier we talked about everyone can't attend the annual conference and participate in the town hall. And, this time doesn't work for everyone today. And, really thinking about what's in that Google Doc, getting in there, getting those opportunities, people, how can I get involved? How can I get involved? You need to let us know that you want to be involved. And if you don't know who to reach out specifically, go to the NACADA website, to the executive office. They have a generic email. You can email NACADA there and they can connect you with the right people for you to share your information, share your knowledge, your willingness to be involved, your willingness to volunteer, whatever that is that you're wanting to do to contribute. We are very open to that and we would love to have you join us as we move the strategic goals forward.
Yeah, let me jump in too and just put in another plug for that Google form that is on the event website. There's the way that's been constructed. There's some questions there where you can offer some specific feedback and then come in with other thoughts that you have. So please feel free to utilize that and share with us. I also want to note that Shannon has been kind of consolidating questions and organizing them around, and you've really brought forward a lot of really good ideas that we're maybe not going to be able to address in the time frame we have here. These are being captured, and so I'll let Shannon talk a little bit about maybe next steps for how we'll attend to summarizing what's happened here today.
Okay, great. So we appreciate you all being here to be involved in this discussion and to hear more about the strategic goals and how we're working to provide some benchmarks and how we're working to measure those. This is certainly not the end of our conversation or your involvement in this conversation. Your input and participation is very important to the board of directors as well as our advising community. So this session today was recorded. You will be provided a copy of the recording today for you to review at your leisure. If you want to participate, watch it a second time. But what this does, it also gives you a chance to further reflect on some specific questions we have in the Google form, as well as reflect on some of the things we discussed today. The form will be open for a week. It'll close on December 22nd. So you'll have plenty of time to kind of review it, think more deeply about some of the things that we brought up today, and really give us some great feedback about these strategic goals and how we might improve them, where you might see some gaps that we need to fill as a board as well. I want to thank you again for your participation. I hope that you join us for the next town hall meeting, which will be on January 19th. And that one will look at diversity, inclusion, and engagement in leadership. And a number of you had some great questions and concerns about that. And our goal when we finish these town halls is also to provide you a summary document showing you what was discussed, the questions that were asked, to be transparent about our role as leaders within the organization. So we hope that you do take the time to give us some great feedback so that we can really steward some of the things that you want to see happen within the organization.
And I have a little note here. Charlie, do you have any final comments that you wanted to add if you're still on there?
Yes, absolutely. I just really want to thank Shannon and Carrie for taking on the leadership with these virtual town hall meetings. I've been executive director and involved since 2002, the EO. This truly is one of the highlights of what we have done to reach out to our members and to find a way to connect with those who can't come to meetings and give everyone a chance to have input. So Carrie and Shannon, congratulations on an outstanding job of putting together this event and the ones coming up. Thank you to President Sanders for encouraging y'all to do this and to charge you with this, because this has been amazing today. And someone asked how we can how you can all get involved in supporting the board and the leadership. And the best and most primary way you get involved is to vote. Think of the elections coming up after the holidays. Voting is one of the ways that you as a member can truly support our board of directors, our council, and all leaders. So Shannon, Carrie, thank you for phenomenal work today. Patty, Brett, and Brody, thank you so much for supporting the work that has been done today. And this has been just outstanding. Thank you all.
Thank you, Charlie. And again, just another reminder, please take the time to review this webinar, share it with your colleagues who weren't able to attend today. We really want broad feedback from our membership so that we can improve what we do for you. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Have a great weekend.